Jamal had never boarded a plane in his life. The idea of flying thousands of feet above the earth had always seemed like a luxury reserved for other people. People who wore suits and carried briefcases, not oil-stained overalls and diaper bags. Yet here he was, standing at Gate 17 of Detroit Metro Airport with his 6-month-old daughter Layla cradled in his arms, her small fists clenched, her tiny face scrunched up and red as she cried without pause. The stares around him burned, some annoyed, others simply indifferent. Jamal kept his gaze low, whispering soft words to calm his daughter, bouncing slightly on his heels the way her mother used to. A pang hit his chest. Mariah is gone just like that. Stage 4 ovarian cancer had taken her in less than a year, leaving Jamal with grief in one hand and a baby in the other. The flight to Houston was a desperate move, a one-way ticket to stay with his aunt, his only remaining family, while he figured out what came next. Boarding the plane was a struggle. The diaper bag kept slipping from his shoulder, and Layla's wails grew louder with every step. Pectedness. As he finally made it to his seat near the rear of the plane, he offered quiet apologies to passengers already annoyed by the sound of the crying baby. He carefully lowered himself into the window seat, trying to keep Layla close to his chest. That's when she walked in. Tall, poised, wrapped in an oversized coat with dark sunglasses hiding most of her face. The woman exuded the kind of quiet wealth Jamal had only ever seen on magazine covers in the auto shop waiting room. She took the aisle seat beside him, saying nothing. The scent of her perfume was subtle but clean, expensive. Jamal offered a nervous nod, embarrassed. "Sorry about the noise," he murmured, hoping for at least a polite response. But the woman didn't reply. She simply leaned back, inserted earbuds, and looked straight ahead. Jamal sighed, rocked Layla again, and prayed the baby would settle. The engines hummed to life as the plane prepared for takeoff, and Jamal could feel the tension rising, not just in the cabin but inside him too. He was tired, hungry, overwhelmed, and afraid. He had no roadmap, no plan beyond this flight. And now he was stuck on a plane with strangers, including a mysterious, silent woman who hadn't so much as acknowledged his presence. But he couldn't afford pride. He held Layla tighter, whispering promises he wasn't sure how to keep. All he knew was that he had to get them to Houston. What he didn't know was that the woman beside him, hiding behind dark lenses and a cold exterior, wasn't just anyone. She was Sofia Lane, billionaire tech genius turned recluse, carrying grief as deep as his own. And in just a few hours their lives, so different in class yet so alike in pain, would quietly begin to change. Sofia Lane sat rigidly in her aisle seat, every part of her wrapped in intentional silence. Her sunglasses weren't for fashion, they were a shield. Behind them her tired, hollow eyes stared straight ahead, seeing nothing and everything at once. The crying baby beside her was loud, but not nearly as loud as the ache inside her chest, the one she'd been suppressing for the past 6 months. Billionaire. That was what the world called her. Magazine covers, tech panels, global interviews. They had all painted her as the face of modern success, pectedness. But success meant nothing when you held your lifeless newborn son in your arms, when your marriage crumbled in the sterile halls of a hospital, when your soul got up and left without bothering to take your body with it. Since then, she had vanished from the world. No press appearances, no company boardrooms, no headlines, just private villas, fake names, and long walks that ended in numb stares. Her PR team had convinced her to take this commercial flight as a way to begin easing back into normal life. No one would expect her here. No cameras, no pressure. Just her thoughts and the numbing hum of the aircraft. But she hadn't expected this baby, or the man holding her, poor, clearly overwhelmed, and struggling to keep it together. At first, Sofia had been annoyed. The crying, the squirming, the slight scent of formula in the air, pectedness. But something shifted when she saw the father gently kiss the baby's forehead, whispering something softly despite his exhaustion. It triggered a memory she had buried deep. The way her husband had once spoken to her belly when they still believed their baby boy would make it. That memory cracked through her silence like a stone against glass. Sofia looked sideways, studying the man from behind her shades. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His hands, large and calloused, cradled the baby with reverent care. His clothes were worn but clean. His eyes, sunken, tired yet fiercely protective, never left the infant. There was something raw about him, something unfiltered. The kind of honesty you can't fake, the kind of love that doesn't care about appearances. And despite herself, despite everything, Sofia felt her heart ache, not in grief this time, but in recognition. She knew that pain. She lived in it every day. But this man, this stranger with nothing, was still showing up, still holding his child like she was a treasure. Sofia leaned her head back, removing her earbuds without thinking. The crying continued, but now it sounded different. Less like noise, more like a signal calling her back to life. She didn't know his name. He didn't know hers. But in the unlikeliest of places, 30,000 feet above the world, two broken hearts sat side by side, both unaware that healing had just quietly taken its first breath. As the plane ascended into the sky, the hum of the engines merged with the persistent cries of little Layla, now growing louder with every minute. Jamal tried everything, bouncing her gently, rocking her, whispering reassurances, but nothing seemed to work. The exhaustion on his face deepened, and frustration, not at his daughter but at his helplessness, began to cloud his eyes. He was painfully aware of every sigh and every shifting passenger, feeling the weight of judgment fall like invisible stones. Just as he was about to break down himself, a calm, unexpected voice broke through the noise. "Do you need help?" Jamal turned toward the woman beside him, surprised not just by her words but by the softness in her tone. She had removed her sunglasses now, and he saw something human and heavy behind her eyes. Grief, maybe, or something like it. For a brief second, he hesitated. He was a proud man, used to doing things on his own. But pride had no place here, not when Layla's wails pierced through him like needles. "If you don't mind," he said quietly. The woman extended her arms, and with an instinctive trust he couldn't explain, Jamal handed his daughter to her. Sofia's arms wrapped around Layla like they had done this 1,000 times before. Her voice, low and steady, began to hum a soft melody, one she hadn't allowed herself to sing since the night her own child stopped moving inside her. To her surprise, the baby began to calm. Her tiny fists unclenched, her sobs slowed, and soon enough Layla was tucked against Sofia's chest, breathing steadily, eyes fluttering shut. Jamal exhaled, the tension in his shoulders releasing in waves. He watched this stranger, elegant, poised, clearly from another world, cradle his daughter with a tenderness that was almost sacred. "Thank you," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "She hasn't slept since last night." Sofia smiled, though it was faint and bittersweet. She just needed to feel someone's heartbeat, she whispered, almost more to herself than to him. They sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that feels full instead of empty. Then, slowly, they began to talk. Jamal spoke of his wife, of how quickly illness had stolen her away. He spoke of his fears as a single father, of not knowing if he was enough. Sofia listened, nodding, her hands still gently rocking the sleeping baby. Pectedness. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. She told him about the son she never got to hold, the way her world had shattered without warning. "I thought I lost everything," she confessed, "but holding her, I feel something again." Neither of them realized it, pectedness. But in that exchange, through grief, through a child's cry, through the simple act of listening, they had begun to heal. There, petness. Somewhere above the clouds, two strangers with shattered pasts shared a moment so real, so raw, that even fate paused to watch. The plane began its slow descent into Houston, and the seatbelt signs dinged softly above them. Pectedness. Jamal looked out the window at the quilted patches of land coming into view, the city lights flickering beneath the clouds like scattered goldness. Layla stirred softly in his arms, her small hand still clinging to the edge of Sofia's silk scarf, now slightly crumpled from their earlier embrace. The quiet between him and the woman beside him was no longer awkward. It was something else now, something unspoken but deeply understood. As they taxied along the runway, The noise of the world started to creep back in. The clatter of overhead bins opening, the impatient rustle of passengers unbuckling early, the sterile voice of the pilot thanking them for flying. All of it reminded Jamal that this moment, however beautiful and strange, was coming to an end. He turned to Sofia, unsure how to say goodbye. "Thanks again for everything," he said, pectedness, trying to sound casual but feeling like he was leaving behind something far more important than a helpful stranger. Sofia hesitated for a moment, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a slim white business card. She held it out to him. "This is going to sound strange," she began, her voice gentler now, "but I run a foundation, something I started years ago for parents, especially single ones trying to rebuild. We offer support, training, even job placement. I think you'd be a perfect fit, if you're open to it." Jamal stared at the card like it was made of gold. His hands were rough and tired, and the idea that someone like her, a billionaire, though he still didn't know that, would offer help so freely felt almost surreal. "Why me?" he asked, his voice low. Sofia met his gaze and, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel the need to hide. "Because you didn't give up," she said simply. "Because despite everything, you still hold her like she's your whole world. That kind of love, it's rare, and the world needs more of it." Jamal nodded slowly, emotion rising in his chest in a way he hadn't expected. "Then yeah," he whispered, "I'm open." They walked together into the terminal, the bright fluorescent lights of the airport welcoming them, into a new chapter neither of them could quite name yet. Sofia paused before going her separate way, adjusting her scarf, brushing a hand gently over Layla's fuzzy hair one last time. "She's lucky to have you," she said. Jamal smiled, heart full, the future no longer something to fear but something to reach for. "I think maybe I'm lucky to have met you." They parted ways without another word, each walking forward carrying something they hadn't had in a long time, hope. And as Sofia disappeared into the crowd, Jamal looked down at the card in his hand, then at his daughter, and knew deep down this wasn't just the end of a flight. It was the beginning of something far more extraordinary.